Hello and welcome back to the Nasty Metal Production channel here at YouTube, and welcome to another album of the week. This is episode number 118, and since I had announced this at the very end of last week's Album of the Week, which was episode number 117, which was a spotlight on the debut album from Dead Ringer Direct Line, and since we are here today for Monday, well, it is here. You see the artwork and you see the title. And since some of you maybe might be familiar with this one, since due to the fact that me and even Bip Bop Boom have actually showed this album on some of our channels, and I've talked about, I've even mentioned this or spotlight this as part of the very first episode of the German Hard and Heavy series, which is still, I don't know about when I'm going to get that back going. Still, it is here. The debut album from the obscure German heavy metal band Rampage. It is Victims of Rock, which was released at least sometime in 1981. It's not really specified what month or day it was released, but it was released in 1981 through, of course, the kind of to at least to the United States here, and to most of us, and maybe even in Europe, at least Britain and whatnot, and Canada, really very obscure German label, which is Hafenklang Records. Hope I pronounced that correct. So there we go. All right, so Rampage. Again, they are from Hamburg, Germany. They were formed in 1980, and it is actually one of the earliest bands that Roland Grapow, actually, was it? Yeah, Grapow. Roland Grapow. Roland Grapow? How about completely pronouncing his name correctly? He is best known for at least playing in Helloween, because he played on, let me kind of bring up his little page here, even though I don't want to spend too much time. Yes, though active, he is in bands like Masterplan and Level 10 and Kreisen. But he is best known for being in Helloween, playing on the albums such as Pink Bubbles Go Ape, Camelon, I hope, or Shyamalan, Camelon. I hope any of those ways is probably the, I don't know, just to steal Camelon, Master of the Rings, The Time of the Oath, Better Than Raw, Metal Jukebox, and his final album being The Dark Ride. So he was part of at least the end of the Michael Kiske era, and then the beginning of the Andy Darris era of Helloween. So, but that's what he's best known for. But this was his early start, really. And on this album, you'll definitely hear at least some riff-wise, and even guitar playing-wise, why Helloween would want to pick him up. Because of there's a lot of that kind of thing going on here, even though it's very early, very primitive. But you'll get that. So this is what Rampage is best known for. At least this one right here, this early band. It's one of the earlier bands for Roland Grapow on guitar. So it's not really, at least sometime, and actually I think it's on the back of the cover here, because of there really isn't much information here on the band, other than at least the lineup for this. That is leading into the Victims of Rock album would definitely be consisting of, here we go, Jorg Shadlik, I think is how I best pronounce his name. He is the bass player here. Drummer is Rainer Muller. Karsten Heyer, I think that's his name. He is the one of the second guitar players here, and then Roland Grapow. So that at least is the lineup leading into the debut album. And for where this was recorded, let me go look in the additional notes here on Metal Archives. It was recorded in October of 1980 in Hamburg, Germany, at the Hafenklang Studios. So I guess the label's own known studio, basically. Their home studio for any of the artists that are signed to them where they record at, I guess. So there we go. That pretty much finally leads in to the actual album. So let's just get into it. Let's get into the debut album from this still relatively obscure German heavy metal band that is one of the earliest stepping stones, or just the earliest bands for Roland Grapow of Helloween fame. So let's get into it. Alright, so finally again, it gets released through Hafenklang Records in 1981. So for this album, it at least consists of 10 songs, and it all clocks in at 35 minutes and 23 seconds. And these 10 songs are, since it has never been reissued, I'll probably get into some of that, why there's probably not a reissue of this album, and of course its follow-up, but I'll get into more information on that. But since it's only on record here, there's always, it's at least roughly 5 songs for side A and 5 songs for side B. So what the first half of this album, being side A, begins with I Want to Be Free, He's a Dancer, All the Lost Time, You Need a Friend, and then finally ending with Liberty. So beginning for side B, for the second half and final half of this album, begins with Victims of Rock, Lonely Love, I Don't Want to Be a Rock and Roll Star, Scarabus, and then finally ending with Tonight. Wow, both songs like Liberty and Tonight are both roughly around 2 minutes and 58 seconds. So there's your 10 songs for this album. Let me kind of see real quick. Let's see if it was produced by anyone here. All songs and lyrics written by Rampage. Front cover painting by Suzanne Ralph, which the cover art I'll probably briefly talk about is. You would not. This is probably one of the reasons why it didn't sell well, because of it. It doesn't scream metal at all, especially hard rock. Since them being from Germany, it ends up being. You almost would think it's going to be something more on the lines of, I don't know, for what was that one band there, Birth Control, or was it what they called Birth Control? I can't fucking remember what they were called. I think that was them, the fucking the krautrock band. You would think it's gonna be something like that instead of being a straight up hard rock / heavy metal album from Germany early '80s. But trying to see if who produced it. I think you know what, it really was self-produced. It was self-produced here, so I just wasted almost half the time there. All right, so let's just get into it. Again, this is a very, at times, because of it being self-produced, it has a very raw sort of production in many ways. In terms of the recording, it's a very rough recording in places. It's not the most perfectly recorded record. A lot of the times, almost sounds like more of a decent, high-quality studio demo. But at the same time, I think it kind of, to me, it adds to the somewhat charm of the sound, because of. Still, for an early heavy metal album from from Germany, at times it really is almost on par with Accept, especially like either in some cases like the first 4 Accept albums. I mean, there's some similarities to the first 2, though not nearly as commercial sounding as I'm a Rebel, but it's very much at times a cross between the first album and Breaker. I was kind of drawing a blank there. Kind of there. It does, and a little bit of Scorpions. You can hear a bit of that, of course, in there. A little, for example, like Love Drive and Animal Magnetism, and then, of course, Blackout. You'll hear some similarities to that, though. It's a lot more raw. It has a more distorted, biting guitar tone that is more at times similar with Wolf Hoffman's guitar tone and Accept. So it's very it just sounds so. It's very much a more, for an early album from 1981. It's a more realized German metal record, because of a lot of early hard rock or heavy metal albums that came out of Germany. Half the time they didn't really always sound very German. Because again, to me, when I think of German metal, I tend to really think of either Scorpions and Accept, because of their sounds are just like the template for that. Again, for all the stuff to me that really is German metal, that would be released through like labels such as Steamhammer, Mausoleum, and Noise Records, you know, that kind of stuff. That to me is where the basis for a lot of what I expect German metal to sound. And to me, this is one of the earliest records that isn't accept, that sounds like a straight up German record. I mean, it's got its heavy hitters. I mean, from the first track, I Want to Be Free, to He's a Dancer, which is a straight up speed metal song. It has that sort of new wave or British heavy metal backbeat going on to it, but it just has a biting guitar tone. It rocks. And of course, then to some of the songs off the second half of the album, being like, you know, the title track, Lonely Love in some places, I Don't Want to Be a Rock and Roll Star, and Scarebus. And then Tonight, especially Tonight, I actually used Tonight as my intro and outro for those first several episodes of the Nasty Metal podcast. That was actually the track I was using. Since of course it's not really copyrighted on YouTube, I was able to kind of get away with using anything off this album I can get away with using, because of it's not really copyrighted on YouTube at this point. It's almost because of the copyright system on YouTube. It's almost free domain because of it's relatively unknown to them, and I can get, again, it's not going to detect if I'm not going to get a copyright claim nor a copyright strike. So that's why I tend to use some of these songs, because I'm not going to run into that kind of issue half the time. Which I know that seems shitty, but the thing is, I'm not getting paid off of YouTube anyways. I'm not monetized, so it wouldn't matter anyways either way. But still, anyways, I want to go into any of that sort of hoopla. Still, you still have plenty of raging rockers on this one that are still very hooky, though at times very commercial sounding. Especially, and I'll definitely get onto to some of the more lightweight moments, which is more really got stuck onto the first half of the album, that being with All the Lost Time, You Need a Friend, and even to some cases maybe Liberty. These three songs definitely are almost, and especially even to some cases, even Scarebus and even I guess a little bit of Lonely Love, but that's got a nice through. Again, it's very Scorpion sounding. To me, it's Scarebus, All the Lost Time, You Need a Friend, and Liberty that are probably the more lightweight songs off the album. But I find them interesting, especially with songs like All the Lost Time and You Need a Friend, because they are very 70s German inspired. Like, for example, I can tell that they were listening to a lot of, for example, Lucifer's Friend and Uriah Heep, because it's got those earworm-like choruses that, you know, bands like Uriah Heep and Lucifer's Friend were known for. It's got that. It's straight, and it's so interesting. It's different, but those are one I can make some where it's got that kind of sound. It's just different, and it's a little interesting. And of course, Liberty kind of goes for that a little bit, but it's for sure All the Lost Time and Unit Friend are probably the most where that you could tell they were listening to a lot of Uriah Heep and Lucifer's Friend in terms of just coming up with their choruses. And again, All the Lost Time is more of a ballad, but it's actually a very, to me, a decent crafted ballad, where it begins kind of soft, but as it keeps going on, it does get a little heavy. It rocks in places too. It's got a nice sort of just a very human, sincere effort going on with this song, and I actually kind of find it interesting. You Need a Friend is definitely more straight up obvious. It's trying to really go for that sort of really just somewhat almost happy kind of chorus. Again, something that I almost expect from like either Uriah Heep, especially later period of like Uriah Heep and Lucifer's Friend. That's sort of like just straight up choruses. Again, very John Lawton-like in some places. That kind of stuff going on. The backing vocals, all of that. But again, there's just straight up hard rockers on here. Again, Roland Grapow is definitely the main highlight of this album, because if you really could tell, he was gonna go on and do even, and in some cases, better things, especially with like Helloween, for example. Though that took a little while because he came in during the worst period in Helloween's career. Still, he did fine for himself afterwards when Andy Darius at least came into the fold. But everything right here, it's primitive, but to me, everything works. I can't fault anything. Again, the artwork and even the back cover, even at times, is very krautrockish almost. It's just so different. But I just dig these guys. I just dig this record. So it is one of my favorite early metal records that come out of Germany. Just an early German metal record. I actually it's probably one of the ones that does sound the most, German metal for at least 1981, besides Accept, or maybe at times Scorpions. It's before, again, all the bands on like Mausoleum and Steamhammer and Noise Records would then come along and just run with that sound and expand on it, and even taking it into different directions, making it even heavier. But this is one of the earliest examples of a band that already has that sort of German sound anyways. So just a solid record. I can't say anything bad about it. I just like it. So after that, after Victims of Rock is released, there is going to be some lineup changes, some additional members too, because of after this album, let me kind of hear, Henjo Richter, who would be, to this day though, is still in Gammay Ray. He would go on to play with Gammay Ray. He would then come into the fold for at least the follow-up album, Love Lights Up the Night, which would be released in 1983, and it would be the last and final album for Rampage. I don't have that album yet. I know it's still relatively cheap, but I mean, both Victims of Rock and Love Lights Up the Night are both relatively cheap records on Discogs. So at some point in time, I might end up getting the second album, Love Lights Up the Night, and then maybe in sometime in 2023, I will spotlight that album. So, but until then, that's where we end things. Sadly, though, for members such as Jorg Schadlik, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, and Karsten Heyer, they would sadly pass away. Though again, according to the Metal Archives, the date is unknown for when they passed away. But the thing is, it's recognized that they had passed away. So sadly that. As for at least these two albums in general, the first two albums, on why they haven't even been reissued on any format, being CD or even back on the record or even cassette, is because according to Roland Grapow, the Rampage's albums cannot be reissued because the original tapes were destroyed by a former member of the band. Which is absolutely, I guess someone was absolutely disgruntled and obviously wanted to just destroy the fucking tapes out of pettiness, I guess. I don't know. Or unless something by accidentally happened maybe in his house. And again, he just takes the fall for it, like, well, he obviously destroyed them because of his house caught on fire or whatever. Or maybe he just got real pissed off and fucking threw the fucking tapes onto the street and decided to run them over with a goddamn semi. I don't know. Or is his own fucking karma? Maybe he took a baseball bat and just swung at him. Or maybe even took fucking kicked him like they were a goddamn soccer ball. So sadly, who knows what happened and why if there was any, I guess, tension between the members, and obviously just wanted to get back on the members by destroying tapes. But it's not like though that they can't take a fucking decent they can't just find a good nice looking copy of the album, and with the equipment we got for recording records, especially fucking Patry Angle of fucking High Roller Records, most of some of those albums that are getting reissued are at least the sources are taken from very good high quality vinyl reps. He does a great job with making them sound professional. So it's not like that kind of treatment can't be done to these first two albums, or you can take a really good, nice copy or sounding copy of these two albums, and whatever the good equipment you got that is just professional, you probably can make them sound close to at least the master tapes. You probably can do fine with them and remastering them from there. You probably can. So I don't know why that is not an option there, but I guess it's always better if you're going from the master tapes. I mean, we all thought that the master tapes for at least for a lot of the heavy load stuff was gone, but it seems like that when No Remorse announced that they were getting reissued, and with all the stuff that was unearthed, maybe they weren't all completely destroyed. So I don't know how that happened, unless some of the band members had copies of some of those albums, of the tapes that were that were sadly might have been destroyed in the Thunderlode Studios, it was called. That was where because it would flooded, and they thought that the tapes were at least destroyed. Maybe they were, but they took from like some of the CDs, I guess, the early CD pressings, and remastered them. But then all that all that obscure, like the unreleased stuff, then ended up seeing the light of day. So I don't know how that would have been. So unless the band members kept copies of some of the unreleased stuff, the stuff that didn't really make it on the record in their own homes for personal listening or whatnot, just for personal keeping. So I don't know how that happened. So could that have been? Could that be the case with Rampage? Maybe somebody has a spare copy. Did they make copies of the tapes before? Besides having one copy, did they make several copies? I don't know. I don't know how that happened. Either way, the fact that the master tapes are supposedly destroyed forever is a bit of a sad thing for at least anyone who was ever recorded, really, to somebody to a person who's had recorded who basically spent years recording this stuff, to just think to find out that it's all been destroyed, even if it isn't the best thing they ever did, still at the same time it's some of their early works. And there's always a little bit there at times there might be a little bit of a what's the best word I'm using, kind of just a straight up sincere feeling towards that, there's something that's, you just feel that way, and for that to just be gone, I can imagine that probably is a bit of a slight blow. So that's all. Either way, still, it's not like that they are not hard to get a hold of. They're not that expensive. You can find these albums on Discogs for roughly around $10 or $9, depending on shipping. It might be to 20, but again, it's not going to be like you're spending about an arm and a leg for an album, like with some albums that were very rare and were released on relatively obscure labels, or independent stuff, that jazz. So there we go. Still, good album. Again, at this point, it's obviously has reached its 40th anniversary, though it's to have try and review this album or spotlight this album around its anniversary was going to be an absolute pain in the ass, because of it. You can't really find any information on when the month of this album was released. Still, it's at least was knowing that it was released in 1991. I mean, they always put the years on the back of the records. At least most of the time they do. So it's still, the fact that I'm doing it here in 2021, around its 40th anniversary still. So it's just definitely great. Good album all around. Again, if you're not familiar with Victims of Rock by Rampage, again, I think if you're into really checking out the Germany's early sort of hard rock, heavy metal period from the late 70s to early to mid 80s, this is definitely an album I think you definitely should at least check out and give some listen. It's very rated highly by some people online, especially for reviewers. I like this album. It's definitely surprising how there's at least some sort of just love for some of these albums. So it definitely says they're definitely good, high quality, especially for, I think, the reason it's probably the crowd that was in that knew of Roland Grapow stuff and Helloween, and of course Henjo Richter stuff and Gammay Ray. So that the Gammay Ray and Helloween crowd that obviously went back and decided to check out their earlier beginnings and obviously ended up enjoying those. So you definitely, it does show. So if you're really into that and want to check out the early, beginning stuff for some of these guys, I think you can't go wrong with checking out Victims of Rock from Rampage. So with that, I hope all of you enjoyed. So that's it for episode number 118. What is going to be episode number 119 for Album of the Week? Well, let me get my phone here. Because I think I have a very good guess on what's going to be next week's Album of the Week. Episode number 119. And yes, looking at my schedule, it is the follow-up to On Through the Night from Def Leppard. It's High and Dry. That's going to be next week's Album of the Week video. Again, episode number 119. One of my absolute favorite albums from them, and really one of the last great album from Def Leppard. So that's going to be next week's Album of the Week Spotlight. So with that, I hope all of you enjoyed. This is Heavy Thrash Shed saying I am out. And I'll see you all later. Take care, everyone.